Hello and welcome to this channel, everybody. This is the Eradicator, and in today's video, well, we are going to talk about a game franchise that I hold really dearly in my heart, and I'm talking about Age of Empires. Now, a couple of years ago, Microsoft announced, made some really big announcements. They said that there would be an Age of Empires 4 and that all Age of Empires games would be getting a definitive edition version, which is what you can see right here on the screen. This is Age of Empires Definitive Edition. I've made a little review on my channel. I'll put the link in the description down below. Yes, it only has 4 views, so I hope maybe we'll have more. Anyway, so the definitive editions are basically exact remakes of the original games, but with enhanced graphics and a completely new musical score. Actually, it's the same musical score, but instead of being in MIDI formats, then it's actually with a full orchestra. So it's a much better, audio experience. Everything has been re-recorded so that the game gives you a modern gameplay experience, which is something that people have been voicing about, that these games have been aging sometimes poorly, especially the original Age of Empires, and so this is why they've decided to make these definitive editions so that everybody could enjoy these classic games, but with the comfort of modern I wouldn't say modern graphics, but modern technical modern technical aspects. That's what I would be saying here. And so that was about a year ago when Age of Empires Definitive Edition was finally released, and unfortunately it did not live up to people's expectations, mostly because they used the original engine that they just upgraded with modern graphics, because simply our machines now are much more powerful and allow us to compute more elements, more data, have more details, which was not the case in 1997, of course. But pathfinding was still very clunky. Some of the flaws of the original games were still present in the definitive edition, and so people were complaining about it. It was like, yeah, it's exactly like the original game with absolutely no improvement, just visual and audio improvements, and that's about it. And so that's why reactions were overall positive, but they tended to go towards the mixed side. Now, the other thing that was not fantastic about Age of Empires Definitive Edition was that it was only available on the Microsoft Store. Now, for those of you who know, Microsoft Store is not the most popular platform. People really were angry, to say the least, that the game was not on Steam, which is where people have been playing Age of Empires for the past couple of years. I'm sure I said the past decade. Steam really carried on where the MSN Gaming Zone left us. It really carried on the community, and especially with the Age of Empires 2 game, which has its HD edition on Steam. Also, the developers Forgotten have really developed Age of Empires 2 to the point that it has far more civilizations than the original games. It even has extra campaigns that there was even a new campaign that came about 2 years ago about Asian civilizations, which is something that we would have never imagined in our wildest dreams. And so this brings us to Age of Empires 2. Very recently, there have been some posts right here on the ageofempires.com website about the upcoming release of Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition, and especially over the past couple of days, there has been a lot of activity on the Age of Empires website regarding what is going to happen during this year's edition of E3, and I'm going to read out some of these posts here that we can see on this website. So recently we announced 3 of our definitive editions will be coming to Steam. Yes, finally! Thank you for listening to us, giving our community the choice of where they want to play. And now it's very interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit, because probably what I believe is that sales were not up to the expectations because people don't like the Microsoft Store. And so they finally realized that people are not going to buy their products or their games on their Microsoft Store. If they want to make money, they have to sell on Steam. And that's the reason why I believe that they're not going to make the same mistake they did as with Age of Empires Definitive Edition, which in my opinion would have sold much better on Steam. So I'm glad that they're finally taking this approach. I'm glad that they realized that basically their Microsoft Store is crap. With E3 fast approaching, kicking off with Microsoft keynote on Sunday, June 9th, oh yeah, we are excited to announce that we will be on the floor with Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. Yes! Oh, this Age of Empires 2, guys, is my favorite game of the entire franchise. I love the Age of Empires 3 too, but the Age of Empires 2 is just, in my opinion, the most balanced game. It has so many different civilizations. It's just so much fun, especially one of my favorite things to do. It has this iconic map, Black Forest. My favorite thing to do is to have these siege onagers destroy the forest and attack enemies through the forest. This is my big specialty. I love to do that. This is just so much fun. And just picking up the gold, fighting for the resources, having a knight red and making a rush with knights and just changing, rushing towards, changing the ages. It's just awesome, and I cannot wait to play that with modern graphics. 4K Ultra HD graphics. So if this is looking something similar to Age of Empires 1, but with Age of Empires 2 visual experience, then yeah, this is going to be really, really, really awesome. It is also going to have a fully remastered soundtrack. Yes, no more MIDI. Fully remastered soundtrack with orchestral score. Yes. Now then, 4 new civilizations. This is something that I am quite intrigued, because if we're talking about the Age of Empires HD edition, we already have a lot of new civilizations. So are they going to keep all the added civilizations that have been added throughout the year? I'm talking about the Malays, or the Khmers, or the Viets, or the Berbers, the Portuguese, the Italians, the Slavs. That doesn't leave much room to new civilizations. I gave some thought about which other civilizations could be added, and there's really not a lot, because we're not talking about countries here, unlike Age of Empires 3. Age of Empires 3, we're talking about countries, not civilizations. But in Age of Empires 2, we are really talking about civilizations. So, for example, when they're talking about the Franks, it's not just France. The Franks would include also, back in these days, there were lots of different Frankish kingdoms, including Burgundy, for example, which you play in the Joan of Arc campaign. Some parts of Switzerland, so it doesn't, some parts of Germany too. So it's not just that. Same, for example, with the Celts. When you play the Celtic civilization, that would include the Irish, the Scots, the Bretons from Brittany. So it's not just one country at all. So I was wondering, which civilizations are missing? I would say perhaps the Basques in Europe are missing, and the Basque would be symbolized by the country of Navarra, which existed around that time period. We could also think of some Himalayan civilizations, maybe the Tibetans. We don't have the Tibetans in the game, but they were already existing and they were separate from the Chinese. So that could be a second possibility. A third possibility would be something like maybe the Tatars. So these kind of, but we already have the Huns, so probably this would be a bit similar. But it would include maybe the Cossacks, or some of these Western Asian civilizations that we don't have enough in the game, perhaps. And the fourth civilization would be, in my opinion, the Germans, because we already have the Teutons, but the Teutons were a religious order, so they were not. They don't really represent a people as such. And we already have the Goth, but the Goth are not really Germans too. They're more between Germans and Scandinavians. They originate from the island of Gothenland, and then they eventually spread throughout Europe because they were nomadic. So we don't really have the Germans, but they did existed because there was already the Holy Roman Empire back in these days, which were mostly controlled by the Germans. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Germans maybe make an appearance. Or we could have something like another religious order, a bit similar to the Teutons, but in the Mediterranean, and that would be the Knights. the Knights Hospitallers, who were back in these days. They were not in Malta, they were on the island of Rhodes, but they were extremely influential in the Middle East, and maybe we could have something similar to them, except that the Teutons in Age of Empires 2 were more of a land-based civilization, especially these Teutonic Knights were extremely powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if this civilization makes it into the game, that maybe these would be more specialized on sea, since Rhodes is a Mediterranean island, and these the Knights had to rely on the Mediterranean Sea for their survival, so perhaps their unique unit would be a sea unit. Anyway, we'll see. We'll see. I'm just speculating here. What else do we have? Attendees will be able to experience Stunning Fog. We've already seen that. Yeah, so this is pretty exciting. Now, we also have a glimpse of what it may look like. For that, I actually went on their Twitter page because somebody tried to recreate what it would look like here, and it's actually, I think this is the Mongolian special unit, which is the Mongolian archer. To be frank, if this is how it's going to look like, I am not really that impressed. But again, it's not. They're not going to rebuild an entire engine. If they are doing the same thing as the original Age of Empires, they are going to use the same engine, but just upgrade the graphics with modern standards, so that because all modern computers now are able to do that. So, oops. So it would be more something like this. If this wants to, so that's why you see the grass, for example. There's not much details here, but so I'm a bit concerned when I see that. But anyway, we'll see. We just have a couple of days to wait, so we'll definitely see. One more thing, we do have also some Age of Empires 4 news. There has been some leaked information about the Microsoft E3 presentation, and apparently they do plan to tell us more about Age of Empires 4 during the keynote presentation. This is supposed to be a surprise, which is why they have not announced it. But finally, after 2 years, we will finally have some information regarding Age of Empires 4, and that is also something I'm most excited about. We still don't know if Age of Empires 4 is going to cover the 19th century, maybe World War I. We have no idea. Maybe it's going to cover from the prehistoric ages until the end of Age of Empires 3. This is a mystery. Only time will tell. So that's about it for this video, guys. Are you excited about all of these new Age of Empires news? Are you going to play Age of Empires again? Please tell me in the comments down below. That's all for today's video. If you like this content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. That is really helping the channel a lot. This is the Eradicator. I'm signing out.